Really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with y'all today. For those of you that, I imagine there's a lot of folks from Lee County in here, and for those of you that aren't, we're glad to have you here. Always good to have folks come visit us here in Lee County. We're kind of proud of our county, and if you don't know why, just ask some of these folks who live here and you'll find out really quick. I've got to tell you, I was really excited when I came in. I came in this door here, and I saw that there was bottles on that table over there, and I thought, dang, this must be a pretty good little meeting. But then I got to looking close, and I see it's muscadine juice, not wine. I thought it was some of that muscadine wine up there in Harborville or something. I said, hey, it's going to be a pretty good little speech going on here. Get refreshments before the speech. I'm going to tell you, I've been, as mentioned, law enforcement officer in law enforcement for 37 years, and old habits are hard to break. When I first decided to seek the office of sheriff, for so many years I had, my daily routine is I seek a couple of people on the street corner, and my first thought is, pull over, what are you people up to? What's going on over here? And now it's different. It's like two people in any location, but hey, how y'all doing? How's everybody doing? How's your family? Politicians can't get it out of there. What I want to talk about is criminal trespass, issues of criminal trespass, particularly as it involves itself or as it pertains to rural lands, as I understand would be applicable in the circumstances here. And it reminds me of a thing. It's a lot of times the issue is simply about delineated space or particularly marked areas and that type of thing. And I've got a little story I'd like to run by you right quick. Speaking of marked areas. Years ago, and this is something that continues to this day, but this applies to a situation that occurred some time ago. Part of the law enforcement operation, especially on Friday and Saturday nights, is patrolling out in the county areas. We have these establishments, and these establishments are engaged in the entertainment business, particularly as it applies to liquid refreshments. And folks like to go out and have a nice time. Sometimes they have a little bit too good of a time, quite frankly. But anyway, they like to go out and frequent these establishments. And the ABC, Alcohol Beverage Control Board, refers to some of these establishments as Class 010 Retail Lounge Liquor Class 1 establishments. The law enforcement community refers to these same establishments as beer joints. We dispense with the technicalities. At any rate, some years ago we had a typical Friday night where the patrons of this particular establishment had gotten just a little bit out of hand. They were, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, they were having too much fun. And there is such a thing. So anyway, we get a call to go out there because the too much fun had morphed into a little bit of knife play and a little bit of shooting activity and that type of thing. And we really don't like shooting activity unless it's at a firing range. So we respond to this location, and sure enough, parking lot's absolutely slap full of cars. There's people running everywhere, hollering, carrying on, the usual stuff that you would associate with this type of activity. So we managed to round up about, 20 folks that were engaged in the worst of the activity that was currently in progress. And we looked at the car, and we look at them and say, I don't think these people are going to fit in this car. And we wanted to arrest several, so we decided, well, we'll just pick the worst out of this group of 20 or so folks and take them. And a partner says, well, what are we going to do about the rest of these folks? And I said, I got an idea. So we go out, and this is a dirt parking lot, of course. And we take a stick and we draw this huge circle in the parking lot like this, and we say, all right. And we loaded up the back of the car with 4 or 5 and just turned them sideways and got them in the car we could. Anyway, I made the rest of them get in the circle and said, all right, y'all, here's the deal here. This is the jail. You stay inside this circle, we're going to be back, and we're going to ferry the rest of y'all up there if we can find some cars or pickup truck or bus or whatever. If you don't stay in it and you leave, we're going to charge you with escape. So they all looking around. Okay, so we get in the car, we drive it. It takes a long time to process some of the folks in, this kind of thing. We're up there, and it's gotten to be 3.5 hours later, so we pull out of the parking lot, and the sheriff's officer driving down the road, and neither of us say anything for a few minutes, and finally my partner looks, he says, you don't suppose that, I said, let's go find out. So we go back out there, and sure enough, 6 people are still standing in that circle. It's getting to be about 5 in the morning, and they're all hollering, "Hey, we know who the ones are. We got their names here. We're going to come up with a check." I finally just told them, "Y'all just going home." But anyway, that leads me to the discussion regarding criminal trespass, about defined barriers and things that involve themselves with that. We'll talk a little bit about the laws of the state of Alabama, of course, and you know, in most states around the country, they're very similar. You're going to have a few differences in the particular elements, but basically you're going to have the same basic things. And by the way, let me offer a little something to bring in my remarks. These are base guidelines. Everything doesn't apply the same in every circumstance, depending upon the jurisdictions around the state of Alabama, as you might imagine. Different people do things a little bit different ways. But, you know, it's kind of like that commercial on the 1-800 channel. Your results may vary. But in this particular case, this is what the law says, and you take it from there and how it goes. What mainly we see from the sheriff's standpoint and from law enforcement in the state, particularly in rural areas, is a second-degree issue of criminal trespass when somebody's on somebody's land that they're not supposed to be on, bottom line. And as you can see from the slide, the state of Alabama has a criminal trespassing second-degree law, and it's basically you're guilty of that if you're knowingly entering or remaining on someone's, or in a building or on real property which is fenced or enclosed in some manner designed to exclude people from doing that in the first place. That's pretty simple. I mean, you've got a tract of land, you've got a fence clearly defined all the way around it, you've got a gate that controls access to it, you've got somebody there that doesn't have permission to be there. Yeah, they're trespassing. That's pretty much the way it goes. They can say, "Well, I didn't know where I was, and I didn't understand." And you know, when you climb over a fence, come on. That's the point we're making. As long as that can be established, then basically that gives them, or the concept, their intent and knowledge that they should have been in the first place, and that pretty much covers the base. And usually it can result in a successful prosecution. It doesn't necessarily have to go to the prosecution level, but if that's what the owner intends, then certainly that would support that charge. It's a Class C misdemeanor. In the state of Alabama, Class C misdemeanor, you could be sentenced to 90 days, up to 90 days in jail, and a $500 fine, depending upon the circumstances. Another degree of trespass is third. Third degree in Alabama is guilty of criminal trespass if you knowingly enter or remain unlawfully on some premises. Well, obviously this would apply in a circumstance where there may not be a fence. There may not be any signs, anything indicating that they're in a place where they shouldn't be. Well, let me tell you about that. Part of the definition of the law is the term enter and remain unlawfully. Well, the definition of enter and remain unlawfully is pretty important. I think that's something that needs to be clarified. If a person goes onto unimproved and apparently unused land, and there's nothing of indication there, then this law or the state technically recognizes that they have license and privilege to do so. Unless, number one, they've been told by the owner not to go on that land, plain and simple. Or, in lieu of that, number two, if there are signs conspicuously posted saying no trespassing. Simple as that. If you remember those two rules, you'll be in pretty good shape, even if there is not a boundary or an indication that that is private property or has an owner and it excludes intruders or persons that aren't supposed to be there. So I guess it goes back to the fact of a baseline that it's really important if you have land to have it marked in some fashion and certainly have it posted with signs. That is the primary way to make sure that anybody that claims, well, I didn't know, well, they do, especially if those signs are conspicuously posted. And I would recommend this. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, literally. If you have a circumstance where you have a problem with trespassers or individuals out there, take pictures of where you posted signs and how it appears to the person just looking at it from the boundary, and that goes a long way in court of law, folks. Anytime you've got documentation in the form of photographs or documents in writing, it really goes well, because I've been told by no more than one federal judge, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. If there's not a picture of it, it ain't there. So just a word to the wise in that regard. I want to talk a little bit about timber trespass. This is something that certainly might be of concern to all of you. Timber trespass is an encroachment that occurs when a person is harvesting timber and cuts across a property line without permission, of course, cuts timber owned by an adjoining landowner. And this happens due to one or both of the following reasons. And I bet everyone in this room, many of you in this room may have heard of circumstances or be very familiar with circumstances such as just described. It's when the person is harvesting the timber fails to basically get a determination of the property boundary lines before they start their cutting, and or the property boundary lines are not properly marked or maintained by a landowner. Folks, can't tell you how important it is, and many of you probably already know this, and I'm not just be preaching to the choir here, but it is really imperative to make sure you have clear boundary markers in whatever form they may be, just to indicate if you're having someone do some cutting, that they know exactly where they're supposed to go and exactly what they're supposed to cut. The calls that we've answered through the years here in Lee County have involved this type of thing, where in many cases the person doing the harvesting didn't realize they had gotten off track. They simply weren't aware, and that does happen. Some mistakes are made, and then another circumstance that invariably happens, and these are always big headaches, is where there's a property dispute between two adjoining landowners. Nobody's saying, no, the line's right here, no, it's right here, here we go. Those things, as you might imagine, stay tied up in civil court for quite some time. But that's where we run into issues involving this timber trespass circumstance. Quite frankly, most of the time, these end up working into the area of civil law as opposed to criminal law, because sometimes it's really tough to bring a criminal charge in regard to these issues, simply because of the degree of proof required to establish that somebody knowingly and intentionally went out and did whatever it is that the issue is at hand. And that's the tough part. And I know it's got to be frustrating. Many times it certainly frustrates us from a law enforcement standpoint in trying to help our folks that are plaintiffs out there and our citizens trying to protect their land, and they've got somebody that's out there doing something. It really is frustrating to us. I know it's frustrating for landowners. It's got to be. And haven't seen that from personal experience. So anything that can be done to ensure that there is no question at all through documentation, through clear boundary markers, and through documentation that what is being done and where it's being done is supposed to be done there. That's the best way to go about that. And hopefully, if it gets to the point where there is a crime to be charged, then it can be supported by adequate evidence, because these judges, that's what they want. And without it, it's really very tough. Alabama Code, a lot of law enforcement officers aren't familiar with this code. The Forestry Commission sure is, and many of you may be as well. It's the Code of Alabama. It's Title 9, 1360. It's about unauthorized cutting, removal, transportation, and whatever with timber and other forest products. Folks, they really should change this to the Harvey Updike law, because that's exactly what the circumstances were with the Tumors Oaks. They applied 9/13/60 to that particular case, and that's what he pled to most recently in regard to the damage he did to those, the killing he did to those trees. This is basically, the law is that any person or persons, one, willfully, knowingly cut, kill, destroy, girdle, chop, chip, saw, or otherwise damage timber or forest products that are not their own and without authority of the owner. That pretty well sums up what happened over at downtown Auburn. Number two, willfully or knowingly removes timber or other products other than his own without authority of the legal owner. Number three, transports it or other forest products that have been removed in a manner that's described in 1 and 2. And of course, 4, willfully, knowingly purchase, to contract or purchase otherwise timber. In other words, being in cahoot with somebody that did the actual act and then purchasing this timber knowing that it's been harvested in this way and then transporting it. And then number 5, selling, contracting to sell, disposing, otherwise pole, piling, cross piling, pole, it pretty much covers the gamut of regard to forest products that will come in, and of course establishes some punishments that would apply in regard to those particular violations of the law. Again, it goes back to having the adequate documentation and ensuring that you can establish conclusively and clearly that the person was in violation and had absolutely no permission to be doing any of the things they did. And of course, that would go a long way to establish they intentionally did it, not knowing or having been forewarned or whatever the circumstance may be. As with any crime, and this is a standard thing, it doesn't matter whether it's timber products or trespassing or whatever, any kind of a crime requires this matrix here. You've got to have a victim, you've got to have an offender You've got to have the opportunity. And I constantly preach in our neighborhood watch programs and our rural watch programs that if you can eliminate the opportunity for a crime to occur, we'll eliminate the majority of crime overnight. Obviously, it's easier said than done. But it is a key to crime prevention, removing opportunities. And opportunities can be removed in many ways by taking actions that simply haven't occurred that would prevent things from happening in the first place. And that's something that we're constantly trying to educate the public on. You've got to have that opportunity. If you, like I say, you remove anything in regard to opportunity, then it just breaks this triangle up and you're not going to have the problems that you would have with the crime. Separate those and the crime stays by itself and it can occur. All right, I also want to talk about territoriality. This goes a little bit back toward what I was already speaking about. Establishing ways to prevent crimes or prevent individuals from being able to claim, well, I didn't have any knowledge, I was in the wrong place doing the wrong thing. Territoriality issues, in particular, clearly marking areas, as I've said before, fences and cables, which is the most common method of determining property boundaries, posted signs. Can't go enough about how important it is to have those posted signs. As you recall from the definition of criminal trespass earlier, the posted signs are one of the keys. It supplants a person having to communicate that directly to the individual. You've got those signs up, that's the same thing. It's a whole lot easier and it accomplishes the same objective and complies with the law. Whether it's paint on trees, I've seen all kinds of things, and y'all have too. Defined paths, any of these things can be used to present in a circumstance where there is a crime or a crime alleged that this person should have known. You know, any common sense person looking and seeing these items, posted signs, fences and cables, paint on trees, defined paths, that they were somewhere where they shouldn't be. Obviously somebody's maintaining this land and belongs to somebody and you don't have any business being there. Something simple as that. This sign, courtesy of the Alabama Wildlife Federation, but these are little plasticine, kind of plastic, they're weather resistant. Not a very expensive proposition, and this accomplishes the objective right there. That's all it is. Was that particular entrance stage as far as that goes? But that's what I'm talking about. It's a simple sign posting, just warning people, hey, no trespassing, stay off this land. It belongs to somebody. You don't have a business here unless you got my permission to be on it. Surveillance, something else that helps in regard to prevention. Increasing visibility. That can be problematic with large tracts of land in rural areas, of course, but anything that can be done to make it clear from anyone viewing wherever this property is that, hey, somebody is maintaining this property and it belongs to someone and I better get permission before I go on it. Whether it's through landscaping, trimming of brush or bushes and trees, and of course video recording devices. Let me tell you what, one of the things we've been using extensively here is technology has brought it to cheaper prices of these game cameras. Those things, I tell you what, we have made more cases using game cameras and identifying people, license plates, people trespassing areas out. We've got tower sites around the county we use for our communications, and we put these cameras up and conceal them, and we're able to make some really good cases. If you have, I bet some of you probably already utilizing this technology already. I tell you what, from a law enforcement standpoint, talking with other sheriffs around the state of Alabama, these things work. And they're getting to the point where they're not that expensive to put out there. Even some of them now will feed you direct over the internet if you can get a signal out there to them in the area. So that really makes it convenient. But we have been utilizing these things more and more as time has gone by in the last year or so, and it really is effective. Plus, if you want to bring a case against somebody and you bring law enforcement this information with these surveillance photos brought back with these game cameras and video recording devices, I'll tell you what, it makes a huge difference. I can just promise you we've been very successful in prosecution for that. Access control, of course, this is kind of a no-brainer type of circumstance. Limiting accessibility using gates, control points, and blockades. Just whatever it takes to prevent people from just having free access to a particular tract or point of property. And of course, there are various and sundry ways to accomplish that. And it certainly indicates to somebody, hey, this is controlled property, and if I don't have permission, I'm not supposed to be here. That creates the issue of knowledge. If they pass the barrier, then they're obviously doing something they shouldn't be doing. I put this website up, or this page from the Alabama Forestry Commission. It's got a lot of helpful information, and you can see it's got the contact numbers. you can basically go online, of course, and access this site. They have some really good information about the different types of circumstances and help available to you. Many of you may be familiar with it already. It would be a bit surprised if you would be. But they certainly do a good job in trying to communicate that information will help you to keep your property protected as far as that goes. And I just want to add one more thing to kind of wrap up. As far as prevention is concerned, that's what it's all about. Preventing it goes a long way instead of having to react to it after it's happened. Certainly with whether it's trespassing or selling timber or whatever, having an agent, a registered forester involved, and I'm sure most of y'all probably do that already. Obviously, that's a great idea. Making sure you have a contract with any sale of timber. Records, they're required to maintain a 3-year record on any contract with timber sales in the state of Alabama. Certainly not getting in a hurry when you're negotiating a contract and making sure that who you're dealing with is a reputable person. And you know, bottom line is, if something's not on your terms, then I'd find somebody else because you're the one that's involved, and if it's not the way to your satisfaction, then we tell people just don't fool with it and find somebody that you want to work with. That's pretty much my presentation, and I'll certainly be glad to respond to any questions.